Very good afternoon everyone. Welcome to this Drops Asia webinar titled Struck by Falling Objects Prevention Best Practices. My name is Joachim van der Meulen. Sorry, bear with me. Okay, let's start again. I was hearing an echo. Good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar. Struck by Falling Objects Prevention Best Practices. So for those of you who previously attended our events, you may wonder, why is this suddenly talking about falling objects and not dropped objects? This is because today we're talking about the construction sector, and specifically in Singapore. And here the term falling object is more widely used. So my name is Joachim van der Meulen. I'm the secretary and facilitator for the Drops Asia chapter of a global work group called the Dropped Object Prevention Scheme, or DROPS. So with me is William Lai, who has recently made a transition from oil and gas to the Singapore construction sector. He was an active member of the Drops Asia Steering Committee, and he will help us explore how Drops best practices may be applied to other industries, and in particular construction. So if you're watching this live via LinkedIn or YouTube, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box and ask any questions. If you're watching this recording and have any questions, please post them in a comment, and William and I will endeavor to get back to you ASAP. William, welcome. The floor is yours.
Hey, thank you, Joachim. Hey, so good afternoon, everyone, or good day, everyone, wherever you are. So my name is William Lai, and yes, what Joachim has mentioned, I used to be a part of the Drops committee. Recently, make a transition and building data centers these days. But still have a lot of interaction with Joachim, and still have a lot of passion in the things that we do. I thought that it is a good opportunity for me and Joachim to share with a new audience. So I'm just thinking that there may be new audience who have not heard of Drops, and we thought that it's a good opportunity for us to share widely what are the best practices, which we believe that are all transferable. So let's move on and let's talk about what's Drops and the organization. So Drops is an industry-wide initiative really focused on preventing drop objects. So this is there's a big global work group represented by 200 operators, contractors, service companies. So these are a lot of them, oil and gas company, energy companies, and service providers globally, right? So Drops Asia, where Joachim and I, myself, used to be working in the past and discussing together, was a Drops Asia group. So next slide, please. Right. So this is introduction of what we have on the Drops website. So really, if you and those who have a smartphone, and I hope you have a smartphone, you can actually scan it on a QR code there, and with the QR code, that brings you to the website. Simple as that. So what you can do is once you get into the website, you're going to see lots of icons there for you to click. And I have to tell you, and they are really free of charge. So you can and take opportunity to scan through all those documents and look at them. Next slide, please. Right. And again, like I said, Drops, we have done lots of webinars together, a lot of best practices. You can go up there and again in the YouTube where we have stored some of those previous recordings, lots of resources that you can use. And what we really want to do is help adopt a lot of best practices. We have different speakers from different operating remit. Some of them are operators, some of them are service contractors, some of them have solutions, bringing you solutions to how to improve Drops. So feel free to again look at some of those previous videos. Next slide. Right. So what Kim mentioned just now, and he said, "Hey, this is a different title. We are calling ourselves this not drops anymore. And we start to talk about falling objects, which is true. There's a little bit of change in the terms that we use. Why is it so? Because in drops is not really very widely used in the construction industry, um, but in a lot of sense, it can't work in the same way, right? There are a lot of things out there very similar, and a lot of hazards that we face in our day-to-day work, whether it's a construction site or whether it's in an oil field. Um, they have a lot of similarities, and one of those things, I'll just pull this out, and this is the guidelines known as the Workplace Safety and Health Guidelines. And those who are based in Singapore, you will know that the WSHCounsil, they publish this as a guideline. And if you go in there, you realize that there are hierarchy of control, and they will talk about recommendation of working at height, and they talk about safe transfer of materials or goods. So these are all generic materials, very good for use to if you want to refer to for some of the practices that you should have, and then implement it at your work area. So these are all good materials. And when I was looking at them, and I say, wow, these are a lot of similarity that we used, what I used was used to exposed to, which is drops. And I thought we can actually bring more material into the community. And that's where Joaquim and I mentioned, and we say, hey, I think we can do a little session and share what we do in drops. And so more people can benefit, more people can understand what we try to do. So let's the next slide, please. So if you go to the website, I've earlier mentioned at Drops online website, you have a lot of resources out there, and you can very quickly play around. It's a very easy website to navigate. I'll just talk about on the point whereby there's a resources and guidelines. So if you click on the resources and guidelines, you actually get the full suite of tools and booklets and downloadable calculators. Those are the things you can get, resources you can get to help you manage drop objects. And I very quickly, let me introduce three items that you probably can use at your work location, which I think is transferable from the oil and gas industry and to the construction industry. So, Joaquim, if you can go to the next slide. The first thing first, something hopefully some of you have seen it before, but if you haven't, this is a drops calculator. So they actually um, very simply, the purpose of it is to help you understand what may the risk of an item falling from height, and how severe the injury can be, or how bad the consequence can be. So it is there is actually a Excel downloadable Excel calculator where you can play around. You can key in the height that the item can be maybe dropping from, and the weight of the item of the item that's dropping. So yeah, so you can actually adopt this one. Why is it useful? I find it useful because you can actually use this in a lot of training materials that you are going to provide to the workers who are working on site. And also, you can use this as an illustration and demonstrate to employees and workers um, how a little bolt or nut falling from a certain height can result in a severe consequence. So those are example of how you can use a drops calculator. It also helps you in your risk assessment. Um, you can decide, what is supposed to be a major risk, what is could be a minor incident. So this can be a good adoption of this drops calculator. So that is item number one, which I think it is beneficial. And excuse me. And the next one I would like to introduce is zone management. Nope. Yep, thanks. So zone management again, this on the left. If you look at the diagram, if you're not familiar with, and this is like a zone map of a rig floor, and we decide what is a red zone, which is a no go, right? And what is a green zone, which means that it's safe for people to walk around. Well, this can be a bit challenging if you're going to use it in the construction site, because in the construction world, um, there's a lot of lifting in a lot of locations, and it can be very dynamic. But if I'm going to put that aside and I'm going to ask myself, I'm going to adopt the principle of no-go zone, red zone, and yellow zone and green zone, I may have an opportunity to implement something that is useful in a construction setup. So that is something that, excuse me, I find that the zone management applicable, and something for people who are working at a site to consider. Next slide, please. Excuse me. If you pardon me, I'm having a bit of a cough, and so so yep. Right. The next one, really, the third item is securing. This is if you remember about the 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 council material that I showed earlier on, and they talk about how you transport safely and all that. If you go to the Drops online website, then you realize that there are a lot of resources on reliable securing, um, and they can allow there are a lot of details of things like the cotter pins. What should be the standard that we should use. We also have things like securing tools. What are the standards that should be adopted? Safety nets as well. A lot of technical standards that can be adopted. Excuse me. So again, um, a lot of there is a very specific material on reliable securing, and that is really beneficial. A lot more details compared to um, the the guidelines that I was showed earlier from the Singapore Workplace Safety and Health Council. So this is the three items, and I thought very useful. Uh, Maybe something that you can consider, whoever working in the industry, working in the construction industry. Yep. Next slide, please. So, right, very very short introduction, and I just want to summarize. I hope that I can use the rest of the time. We all can talk about any questions, any answers. We all can chat freely. So, first of all, struck by falling objects, or drops, is a common safety hazard across some industries. So there's no difference. You can use some of these materials very freely. Okay. Second item is really the drops calculator, zone management, the detailed solutions to reliable securing. They are all available on the website. Excuse me. And feel free to check them out, play around with them, and understand a bit more. Finally, I think in the spirit of what Drops committee we do is to share and seek best practices widely, whether it's in the oil and gas industry or is it in other sectors. We are always happy to share with it, because there's no boundaries in trying to keep people safe in the workplace. Okay. And next slide. So that's all. Okay. Joachim,
That's
back to
right.
you.
Thanks so much, William. Thanks for that overview. Yeah, so as William mentioned, while he's coughing, I hope you get better soon, William. Yeah, so as William mentioned, there are a great amount of resources. Some of it is being more specifically developed for oil and gas, but a lot of them are applicable to other industries. And So yeah, everything you can find on that website, which we shared earlier, is free of charge. You can download it, use it as you see fit, and hopefully it'll help you in your organization. There's one document which I particularly like to get started. It's a jobs recommended practice, and it's a really good guide to kind of get started. Now, William, so you just started in your new job for a few months. How was that? How is it different from oil and gas?
So that's a tough question. uh, no, so what is different? It's not something that I didn't do before. So I've always said I used to work in construction long time ago, but yeah, it's been a long time since I work in the same field. So this is the real estate and construction field. Um, the difference is, I think there's a lot of differences in terms of how the industry seek out has a body, or whether is it the way they contract work, or the way they manage risk at the work site. But fundamentally, I think we do not escape from the framework of safety, right? Fundamentally, we still have a policy in place, procedure in place. The operation wise is something that is different. Uh, but if you know your fundamentals very well in safety management, uh, we can always apply them across. Just like what we mentioned, the hazards, there are similar hazards. We just have to find ways on how we're going to apply them, the operation controls into all these similar hazards.
Excellent. Thanks so much, William. So yeah, I would like to invite the others who are dialing in to ask questions. I know it's a little bit public. It's on LinkedIn, or maybe you're logging in via YouTube. Might not like to post your questions there, but please feel free. It's all about sharing here. Yeah, but if if you're not comfortable asking a question publicly, feel free to reach out to William or myself after the event via LinkedIn or our emails. So while we wait for some questions to come in, I'm just going to show you a project which we're working on. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. So one of the things is we're developing a training program using virtual reality to kind of familiarize your staff on how to prevent dropped object, what the potential impacts are. So it's a lot based on these recommended practices that William showed earlier. I'm going to show you the Windows application, but it's meant to be used using VR. So I basically log in with the application, I create an avatar, and you join the Drops metaverse, where you can explore various 3D environments, which are all around, drops. So we'll show you there's a few scenarios. We'll have one around cargo inspection, one which is a site survey, basically inspecting a work site. Then there's one which is around human factors, and there's a land rig visit, and where we do something around tools at height. Now, I'm not going to dive into this in further details. There are other recorded webinars which you can have a look at if this would be of interest. All right, 1 second. Let me go back to William. There we go. So let's see if there's any questions coming in from the audience, William. Not yet. So let me ask you then, William. So typically in an organization, who's responsible for preventing dropped objects?
So I think typically in an organization will be a collective effort of a lot of people, right? So the engineers who design the system. It could be also the possibility of when you do a design for safety phase as well. Those things can be integrated. So it is an effort of a lot of people. Like many part of the system in the safety management system, we want to include people who can help to think of solutions, and think of programs and to be part of it. So in drops, there may be one person who can facilitate it, and then after that, getting a group of people to work on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, we kind of sometimes call that the jobs focal point or a jobs champion or something like that. Yeah. So something you mentioned, there's a bit of a difference in how you manage contract and how the whole kind of supply chain works a little bit in construction. Now, in oil and gas, we see kind of an effective practice is that drops is written into the contract, so certain expectations are set, and which all the whole supply chain kind of has to follow. Um, have you seen, and I realize it's quite new for you all, William, have you seen that in the construction industry? How does that work there? And perhaps are there areas for improvement?
So good question, right? So if you ask me about the specific language we use drops, no, right? So it is not written in that manner. But if you ask a question about, do we have in a contract and expect contractors and subcontractors to work safely and to have a program to prevent things from dropping? So yes, it could be a language written in a different way. More of how do you, things like your risk assessment. How do you do that, right? And how do you prevent things when you have the lifting program and that kind of thing. So you should have a lifting program. So these are all stated in a contract, but not maybe not to the details of what we draft in like the drops.
Yeah. Yeah, so not specifically a whole chapter on drops as we may see in some of the oil and gas contracts. But yeah, so I finally we're getting some questions coming through. So on the screen, hi Williams, what are the challenges or gaps, differences that you observed, encountered during the last few months compared to construction versus oil and gas? Yeah.
Great, thanks. That's a good question, right? So, Theo, nice to meet you, Theo. So great. Big difference. I think in oil and gas, um, personal thought is there's a very standard governing. There's a lot of industry bodies that have written a lot of standards. IOGP, and you have the likes of the same customers adopting the same things like life saving rules and all that. So you have a lot of synergy when people when they go to a few work site, whether is it in the same in the different countries, they probably understand what the rules are, uh, or the basic certain standard rules are when even though they go to different countries and work. But in construction, a lot of them are I feel there's a lot of country specific. It is the country practices. So it may not be very easily cross over to the other country. So I have not seen the kind of industry bodies that having the certain standards that we all can adopt to. So that's maybe one of those differences. Yeah.
So I guess more we're relying more on the government. In Singapore, there's the Safety Council, but less collaboration, which naturally occurs in oil and gas.
Yep, that's right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, Cho is having a follow up question here as well. So yeah, I guess early days for you
Overcome.
still.
To answer that very plainly, overcoming. I don't think there's a need to overcome some of these differences. There are some dynamics that we would not need to change because of it could be the labor arrangement of the country. It could be the law of the country. So there's no need to really mitigate some of those differences since there's not really a problem. But we can certainly input some of those. I think there's areas whereby both industries can learn from one another, each other. Um, and I think it is about finding. I'll go back to very basics, go up and find out what are the gaps, what are the differences, what is good in construction, maybe something that oil and gas can be using, what is good in oil and gas, and what construction can be using as well, if it's economically viable and it's practical. So yeah, understand the really one of those issues before you decide, what are plans that's supposed to be put up.
Excellent. Thanks. So we have a question from Ashley. I guess this is more for me. Yeah, who's the target audience? So yeah, Drops Metaverse is not a training; it's a platform which you can use for training, and it depends a bit, how you like to use it. So some companies use it to do quite detailed inspection training, whilst some use it more as an awareness. But I think in the beginning we're mostly targeting those people who are actually at risk of dropped objects and can do something about it in the field. So not really the engineering side of things. All right. Okay. So I don't have any further questions coming through, William, and I think it's just nice. We're spent almost half an hour already. I think one of the things which I would like to leave the audience with today is really go to Drops Online and look at those resources and see if there's anything that can help you in your organization. Obviously, refer to the governments, the Safety Council, and if you're in a different country than Singapore, I'm sure there are local documentations as well. But the Drops documents tend to go a lot deeper and really help you, build your campaign. Now, I see another question from Eamon. Eamon, okay. Okay, let's see. There's a question. Do Drops have a Drops roadmap that it would be a poster to style picture identifying the various stages from manufacturing, transportation, storage through installation and maintenance where PDOs could occur and various controls are identified? Yes, Eamon, I'm gonna have to get back to that. We have some PowerPoint slides. It is dug somewhere in the website, but I'm gonna have to look up that information and share with you later. I can, produce it on the spot, but I'll definitely get back to you on that. With that, William, do you have any sharing, any notes before we close?
Yes, maybe just a final note. So thanks for all those who participated for this one. This is really Joaquim and I thought, hey, we want to reach out to audiences and maybe different sets of audiences, and I hope that that open up the new resources that you may not be familiar with, and feel free to reach out. So again, safety has no boundary. Feel free. Happy to share.
Exactly, and that's really the essence all about Drops is really to share across different companies. There's a whole network of people who all kind of willing to share their ideas, even though they might be your competitor in your work. When it comes to safety, we all share. All right, so a good comment from Julius. Thanks for that. So thanks for everyone who dialed in today. Thanks for the encouraging notes. And again, any questions, post them here or reach out to William and myself. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.